welcome everyone. Please join me. Let's do our Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. No presentations for this evening, so we'll move into public comments. The Board of Education believes that open communication with our parents, students, teachers, personnel, and district residents is very important. For this reason, the board sets aside time at the beginning and end of each regular meeting for public comments. However, in order to focus on tonight's previously scheduled agenda, as a general rule, the board will not be able to respond to your comments and questions at this time. We may refer your comments and questions to the administration for follow-up, or we may add the subject of your comments to the agenda of a future meeting. Either way, please be assured we welcome and take your comments very seriously. The board asks each person to limit comments to not more than 2 minutes. In order for the district clerk to maintain accurate records of the meeting, each individual is requested to state his or her name and address. Don't believe we have any public comments. So I'll take a motion, please, to approve the minutes of the budget hearing held on May 8th, 2023 as submitted.
So moved.
Lucy, thank you. In a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Motion's carried. A motion, please, to approve the minutes of the annual budget vote held on May 16th, 2023 as submitted. Sean, thank you. In a second? So, any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. A motion, please, to approve the minutes of the regular meeting held on May 22nd, 2023 as submitted. Lauren, thank you. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. Move on to personnel recommendations. A motion, please, to approve based upon the recommendation of the superintendent, recommendations as submitted and upon fingerprint clearance. And we will go from Margaret Bassett to Ryan Burrows.
So moved.
Okay, thank you. And a second? Second. Thank you. Any questions or comments?
I have some
I
comments.
thought you might.
So thank you so much for your support. We have 2 appointments tonight to 2 probationary positions in the front of our road of filling a number of vacancies. Mr. Roger Hall is with us. There he is. I'm looking this way. Roger, you could just stand for a minute just to be seen. Roger is being appointed tonight as our new Spanish teacher. He went through a fairly rigorous process, he might tell you, including a demo lesson. And despite returning to the field after a little bit of time, you would not be able to tell by the way he was interacting with students. Very natural, pedagogy was solid, we were very impressed, and he was certainly our top candidate for this position. So welcome and congratulations.
Thank you.
We also have Winsome Zinkovich with us tonight. Winsome?
Hi.
Winsome is being appointed tonight as our new Director of Special Education. She may look familiar to some of you in the room. She started her career here at Delaware Academy as a special education teacher for a few years. She went to spread her wings, certainly demonstrated growth. We did not go easy on her though. She went through the same rigorous process that our other 2 administrators in the room have experienced and rose as our top candidate. Her knowledge in special education and clear passion for the field of special education in particular is really what resonated with us and with our committee. Tammy had the opportunity to join us for the presentation component of her interview. So we are excited to be welcoming her back to our Bulldog family. So congratulations, Winsome.
Thank you.
She'll be joining our administrative team starting shortly after the 4th of July. So she'll hit the ground running this summer with us. Thank you.
Well, welcome to both of you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion is carried. This will take a motion, please, for the appointment of Charles Haiti as a student cleaner. So, Lauren, thank you, and second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Other than Mr. Haight is abstaining? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. And I'll take a motion, please, to go from Brian Hillis to Lenny Mintz. Kim, thank you, a second?
Second.
Lauren, thank you. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion is carried.
I do have just a quick comment.
Okay.
I want to offer my congratulations and thank you for dedication for doing the hard work of staying to 3 teachers who are granted tenure this evening as part of that batch of personnel appointments. Megan Oliver is a library media specialist, Alex Chase is a school counselor, and Connor Bressler in physical education. They've all successfully completed a 4-year tenure track and continue to learn and grow with us every day, so congratulations to them on being granted achieving tenure.
Thank you. Did I finish that one up? Did I finish that one up? Was that just?
You did finish that, there was
Okay. Motion, please, for Philip Newman and Sean Newman.
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Lucy, thank you. And obviously, I am abstaining from this. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is carried. And then finally, we'll take a motion to go from Brian Rolfe down through leave of absence.
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion is carried. A motion, please, to approve the Jewel agreement of a particular teacher extending the tenure date to August 31st, 2024. So, Lauren, thank you. And a second?
Second.
So, thank you. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion's carried. A motion, please, to approve the financial reports as submitted by the treasurer for April 30th, 2023 as submitted. So, yeah, thank you. And a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion's carried. A motion, please, to accept the special education report from the Director of Special Education for April 30th, 2023 as submitted. So, Lauren, thank you. And a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion is carried. We will move into our principals reports.
Starting with enrollment, we have had no new enrollments. Student successes, today was the preschool celebration. So cute, so cute. For the middle school, we had our concert last Tuesday and the high school last Thursday. They were both huge successes. We had participants from chorus, band, orchestra, and the ukulele club. They all performed. So great job to all of our middle school and high school musicians and their teachers, also Miss Collison, Miss Gibson, and Miss Lindner. 2 middle school students earned their FFA jackets at the FFA banquet that was held on Friday, June 2nd, and congratulations to all the FFA members. Middle school and high school students attended the High Note Festival at Lake George, and that included orchestra and band students. The middle school award ceremony is taking place tomorrow at 1 o'clock in our high school auditorium. The last day for 7th and 8th graders is tomorrow also, and 6th grade goes until June 22nd. For the high school, the juniors took their U.S. History Regents on June 1st, and the remainder of the Regents will begin on June 14th. Schedule has been sent home and is posted on the high school page of the website. The Spanish trip and senior trip were both successes. Students returned with stories and memories that will last a lifetime. Tractor Day was last Friday. 7 students participated as well as 1 adult who was an uncle of a senior who started the tradition 20 years ago. Today was our annual student barbecue. The weather held and it was enjoyed by all. For high school athletics, Ellie Lees took 6th in the D2 2000 steeplechase at States.
Ooh.
She set a PR and USA top 50 time for this season. That's great. Alton Francisco placed 16th in the D2 1600 at States. And Vincent Van Maren placed 3rd in the pole vault at States, clearing 14 feet 6 inches, which is a new personal record and school record. So congratulations to our athletes. For faculty and staff, I just want to take a moment. I know we have recognized our retirees, but I do want to say that Nancy Piper and Steve Lang will be greatly missed in the middle school. Their impact on kids, I've had a chance to work with them for a year, and just, I will feel that impact as well as the students and their peers. So I just wanted to recognize that, they will be truly missed. And also for staff, as we all know, this is a busy time of year. And, as principals, we just want to say thank you to the staff for all their hard work. They are participating on all these events, after school events, during the day events, meetings, everything. So they kind of bring us into the home stretch. So I just wanted to acknowledge teachers and say, I am truly grateful as Crystal and Julie. It's something that, they probably don't get enough recognition for all that they do, but I truly appreciate every single one of them. Coming up for events, the elementary field days are on the 15th. Elementary concert is the 14th. Oh, sorry, these are a little bit out of order. Kindergarten celebration is the 16th, and the last day for elementary students is the 22nd. For the middle school, I mentioned the award ceremony tomorrow. Last day for 7th and 8th graders for 7th through 12th grade students is tomorrow. Regents testing we talked about is the 14th through the 22nd. We have Juneteenth off, which is the 19th, and then the last day for 6th graders is the 22nd. For the high school, the field days are tomorrow, and then the high school academic awards banquet is tomorrow also, the banquet at 5:45 and the award ceremony at 7 p.m. Regents testing, Juneteenth. On the 21st, our seniors are going to paint the rock. They have their car parade and picnic on that day. On the 22nd, the seniors walk through the elementary, and there's also graduation rehearsal that day, and then June 24th is commencement. So ending us going into the last of June. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I think, yes. It'll be very brief. All right, so in your quick update on the emergency stair project, that is still slated to get started shortly after graduation. And in your packets is just an updated schematic of both of the designs, so you can get a sense of what that will look like as a finished product. And then a sample, an example of a picture of another site. Obviously, ours are not curved, but just to give you an idea, I know that I have questions on how the granite would work and what that will look like when it's completed. There was also a question about the integrity of the design in terms of avoiding the water leakage that caused kind of the problem in the foundation that we currently have in with the bluestone. And so they are replacing that with a solid piece of granite on the currently existing foundation. So it's not a separate riser and tread necessarily, it's one solid piece, which will certainly provide significantly better durability and life to that. We're still on track for the railing design with the integrated lighting, and still on track for that to be completed this summer. So any questions on that at all? Sure, right there. Another update that I had just to add on to Deb's list is on Tuesday night, DCMO BOCES is also holding their career and technical education student recognition at the Herald campus. So administration is going to divide and conquer tomorrow night. While Crystal will be here for the high school academic award ceremony, I will be traveling to see our students who are being recognized for completing their career and technical education over at BOCES. And one last update that I have is I received a letter from the Catskill Area School Study Council recognizing, I thought maybe Tyler was walking in right now, recognizing Tyler Brannigan for, he served this past year on this council as the student director for the Catskill Area School Study Council's Student Leadership Program. Within that program, the role of the student director was to work with 117 juniors from 18 districts across our region. And they engaged in a number of activities. They focused on acts of leadership, developing community service projects, and after listening to speeches given at the April conference, juniors were able to transform the ideals of the council into service projects under the leadership of these student directors. So there's a letter of recognition for Delaware Academy's investment in providing and supporting Tyler in his leadership role, and they've sent me a certificate to recognize that. So I will present that to him next time I see him. And that's all I have for updates.
Your superintendent report.
That was also my superintendent report, yes. I melded mine and Mr. Schultz's together because he couldn't be here tonight. Also, Mr. Ferrara just stepped in, our athletic coordinator. He stepped out of the athletic banquet. I know that there were some questions regarding how we apply and appoint program assistants during the course of the school year across our various athletic teams. Also in your packets is just a current staffing outline spreadsheet of how it was staffed this year. You'll notice that there is consideration of some of the additional coaching staff that Downsville had sent us. But moving forward, Mr. Ferrer and I have talked a little bit about some different conceptual thoughts on making those decisions regarding program assistance. So Jeff, I won't keep you long if you don't mind just
Sure.
speaking to that a little bit for us, that would be great. Sure.
So Typically, when we look at our sports signups, when we're trying to figure out how many coaches we need at each level and who we're appointing, numbers is a big driving factor. If we have more kids than anticipated, for safety reasons, we would want an extra set of eyes and hands on board. We also look at some of the extras that go into the program beyond just the coaching. Sometimes we're sending people out to surrounding schools, scouting. There's hours beyond what happens in the gym and on the field that the head coach can't always tend to, and we will appoint a program assistant. In the past, we've had 7 program assistants is what we currently do per year. Mrs. Zimmerman and I had discussed what it would look like. We have 13 varsity sports, 13 sports programs, I should say. If we had, what the budget impact would be if we had a program assistant for each program. And that person may be able to be purposed at the modified level or the JV level or the varsity level as needed. Or it might just be someone who has something unique they bring to the program. Pitching coaches are hard to find sometimes when you're working with your outfielders and infielders and your pitcher needs that special attention. It might be someone that works with pitchers and catchers from modified through varsity for that particular season. Trying to think of another example. But there's no set one factor that goes into why these people are appointed to these positions. It's usually taking a multitude of factors into consideration.
Jeff, could you comment on the difference between how people come to be volunteers versus appointed program assistants?
So we have our program is just there's no real difference. It's to what the coach approaches me with and what the person is willing to take on as their responsibilities. Right. They're similar positions. They'll do similar roles. Some are paid and some aren't.
And those that are not paid, my understanding based on our conversation is that a lot of times that's personal preference. Someone who may not want to provide the complete commitment but still has the love of the game, wants to be around it.
And our paid coaches, we get the complete coaching certification.
Right.
If someone's volunteering their time, we mandate that they have the necessities like CPR, first aid, concussion management, the fingerprinting and whatnot, but they're not required to take the whole gamut of coaching courses that people we pay are required to do.
So are there requirements for programs, the paid program assistants, they have those requirements as well?
They have to work on their coaching certification. They get 3 years to do it. They can apply for an extension. Some people try to do it as quick as they can, others.
So that's one of the qualifications to be the paid program assistant, that they have to?
You have to start your coaching certification.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Burrow? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks for stepping out of the program. That was good, Jeff, thank you.
Kelly, question for you, totally changing gears. Do you know where we are in kindergarten census incoming? Where we're presently?
No, I don't have updated numbers. I'd have to ask Mrs. Mabel to see if those have changed. Last time that we reported on that, we were right on that cusp
Yeah,
of I have not heard that has tipped the scales to reapproach the board with another classroom. But I can get an update on that.
Yeah, just anything.
I'm assuming if it had, then I would have been alerted to that.
Include the pre-K numbers too.
What's that?
Include the pre-K numbers too.
Pre-K's at the max.
For incoming pre-K or for pre-K, current pre-K, or gonna be kindergarten?
It's like for
I do have an update on that, yes. Mrs. Mabel did just share today that we are down to only four on the wait list. Another spot had opened up, so she was able to give that spot to the next person on the list. So they're now down to 4.
So I guess that brings me to another question, so, because I mean, not for this coming school year, but we have talked about, you know, a goal maybe at some point to expand that program, but I'm just wondering if there's a need, there's only 4 on the wait list.
So we had started that conversation during budget development time, because that would have been the time if we were going to
Right,
commit to a
right.
second
No, I'm not
classroom.
talking for this year, I just meant like a goal at some point maybe, but I don't know how would we, I mean, I guess, would that be the need, like, really, there's only 4 people on the wait list, or other people, I don't know, how would you, is that like a true thing, that if we had another class here, would there be more than 4, like, how would we ever know that, I don't know.
Well, we could engage in, you know, calling families directly, who we know who are
Just
at that
curious.
age. We have used surveys in the past to look at that, and if that's something that the board is interested in exploring during next school year, as we are approaching that budget season, that's something we could look at again.
Do we know if there's been any sort of impact on any preschools in town,
private
for
ones.
example?
I don't think
In
so.
terms of kids coming here and it harming their livelihood, I've not received any complaints about that.
Suppose we can also look at the birth rates, census data, to see if they're changing. Board committee reports. DEI and finance are meeting later this week. The meeting is early this month, so we didn't get much in. Capital project?
We did hold a brief meeting this week, just talked about a few things. One was the front steps, discussed that a little bit, but Kelly updated us on that. We talked briefly about the proposed capital project and what the appearance of the propositions might be, but I think we'll hear more about that shortly. And then the other thing we did discuss briefly was, a couple of things. One was, from the settlement, they're adding 44 new views, camera views. So a lot of those blind areas will not be, will have eyes on them, I guess. The gym floor is getting redone this summer.
Yep, they started that this
And
week, actually, they started
started this
sanding
week.
it, yep.
But the main thing is the old elementary school playground will be fully replaced. In the past, we talked about the surface, the mulch. All the equipment is being replaced as well, starting this summer, and that is being paid for with ESSER funding. So that's very positive things happening.
That's a wonderful use of those funds.
Yeah, it is well overdue.
That's about it. We did talk about, one other thing we did somewhere in my agenda was, looking at, creating a reserve for capital project incidentals. So we looked at long-term, where we fall with incidentals of capital projects and how having a reserve might provide some flexibility in planning, and it's on a 5-year cycle when that incidental resets, so that would potentially allow us some flexibility. I'm sure we'll hear more about that in the future as well.
Yeah, Carrie will have a complete presentation for the board on that. And we're always looking closely at that incidental threshold, as you well know. We've been through this a number of times. As we take on new projects, whether it be the proposed capital project, the emergency project, anything that involves site work, is keeping an eye on that incidental threshold and where that falls off. A way to ensure, in a very conservative fashion, that cushion maintains would be to establish another capital reserve similar to this year, but it is not, does not have to be tied to the current capital project. That's something that can wait until the vote next May to establish. So we have got some time on that. I certainly want to be clear with the community on the differences, and that they are not necessarily contingent on one another. But as Karen and I looked at long-term fiscal stability as it relates to the impact of taking on additional projects, we have a proposal for maintaining that.
In your packets,
I did want to mention the DEI did meet before, well, we're going to meet again this week, but we did meet before that. And it was nice to know that we have 3 students now on the committee, which is, I think, a nice balance. And we hope that they'll bring to us what Tyler and Carter brought to the board, some personal input. And we're starting to work on a mission statement. So we did meet, and we're meeting again this week. And the athletic committee did have.
We're not meeting again till July.
Oh,
Till July.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
The athletic committee had just a memo, basically with the results of what a great season we had. We encapsulated that and caused Mr. Farrar not to have to stretch his time further. But we did touch base.
Thanks for catching that.
no, thank you, my apologies. We have in your packets the policy number 46, disposal of district property, which is up for its second reading. If anybody has any questions or comments.
The only piece that I want to bring to your attention is this updated policy does have a provision for the sale of equipment following the end of athletic seasons for students, should they choose to take advantage of that. And there is a provision in here as well to try to include this year's seniors in that. So depending on the conversation that the board has, I might recommend that you consider including this as a second reading and an adoption, so we can extend that to current seniors.
Let me get that
I'm so sorry.
My only concern with that would be, will we know the cost of replacement at that point?
For the current seniors?
For, let's say I want my soccer jersey, will they know, will the coaches have contact,
We do have replacement values based on what was expended in this current school year for the current seniors. And then moving forward for students next year, that would come when we order equipment over the summer. So we have a pretty good idea of what the replacement would be.
Okay, because,
Based on
and I'm
this
sure
year's.
Mr. Schultz would be right on top of it.
Oh, yes.
Sometimes it's very shocking how from one year to the next,
Oh, that can change.
especially post-COVID.
I have a question, it's not really about what's in here, it's about, I guess, whose responsibility is it to make sure the seniors, this year's seniors know about it, and from here on out, that the seniors, because they have to do it, I would assume kind of the end of their junior year? No, before the season? I don't know when they would have to do it. But anyway, I guess who's responsible for making sure every year, because it's gonna be a new group of kids every year, that they know that this opportunity exists?
Once the board approves a policy, it's my job to implement.
Okay.
So following this, assuming this is approved, then I will work with Mr. Ferrara to develop procedures around this, which will include notification annually, determination, all of those details.
Thank you.
Do we have to have a specific date here right now in order to adopt it? Second page, purchase no later than blank. Right on the second page, first paragraph.
Is that something that we could maybe insert once you get
Well,
your
We could, what we could do is, again, policy establishes the requirement and then procedure dictates how it is implemented. Establishing a purchase no later than date technically would be a procedural component.
Okay.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, Bruce, but through that lens, you could strike that language and just include prior to the start of the senior's final school year. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And then it would be up to the district, remanded to the district to determine that date as we implement the policy. So I would recommend striking no later than, and then the word and prior to. So that it will read, must submit to the district a written notice specifying the new equipment the senior wishes to purchase prior to, leave prior to in there, sorry, prior to the start of the senior's final school year. Thank you, Lauren.
So let me ask you a question, does that make a difference if, I'm not trying not to make this petty, does that make a difference? That's when everything gets ordered, or, so baseball's in the spring, it would be the end of their senior year, they still have to order it? This is what, because it says.
Prior to the start of their senior year, so if I'm
Or
a,
senior season, I guess is
Their
the
senior.
station, she's.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, if they're a senior and they played baseball and want some of their baseball stuff,
depends on when, yeah, it depends on the ordering cycle, you are correct.
so if that's
So
the start of their
technically
final
it could be
senior
later.
year, so I don't know, I'm sorry.
It could say prior to the start of the senior's final season, or at which point the district is placing the order, whichever shall come first.
Are we comfortable to do a third and final reading with the proposed changes that we just talked about? So, I need a resolution for that. Seth, and a second?
Second.
Kim, thank you. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and the policy with amendments is adopted. Okay, we have no old business. Move on to new business. We will have a discussion. Excuse me. On ballot propositions for the capital project with no action to be taken.
At this time, I'd like to invite Ben Maslode of Fiscal Advisors and Jared Yando of Schoolhouse Construction to join us. Thanks for coming in. Thank you. All right, so I've asked Ben and Jared both to join us tonight as experts in the field. We know that based on our initial community forum on capital project planning and based on a number of emails that I forwarded to the board, we've received feedback from our community really on both sides of this issue. So I've asked them both to come in and just talk with the board tonight. No decisions will be made tonight, but rather encouraging the board to have an open and a public conversation on this particular topic. There are reasons why districts, based on their experience, go with one proposition when there are multiple items on a ballot. There are reasons that districts sometimes choose to go with multiple propositions. So we want, before we ask the board to engage in a call for vote, which will be in August, we want to just give an opportunity for you to ask questions, for you to be informed on this decision prior to moving forward. This does not have to be the only time. We can certainly invite them back. There's certainly a phone call away if we are left with other questions that go unanswered after tonight's discussion. So I'm just going to yield the floor first to Jared, really, because the other piece that we wanted to discuss and then kind of move to the side so we can get to the real conversation of the proposition on capital project has to do with the EPC project. You know, we've been planning a separate EPC project in parallel to some of this, with consideration for items that might overlap between the two projects. But regardless, EPC is a standalone and separate project. When I say EPC, I'm referring to the Energy Performance Contract. That really looks at energy savings across the district and a way to engage in upgrades that we can also be aided on through our building aid with New York State. As you know, our current building aid rests just shy of 75%. And in order to fully capture that in an EPC, you do require voter approval. Voter approval is not required to do an EPC project, but if you move forward with an EPC without voter approval, then you lose 10% of that state aid. So again, my recommendation to the board is to maximize what is reimbursable at the state level and to also have a proposition, regardless of how the other two stay together or are split, have a separate proposition regardless on the EPC. So if you want to lead with that, Jared, in your conversation, and then I'm just going to leave it up to both of them to talk about both the capital project side and fiscal implications. So thank you.
Problem. So the EPC, as Kelly, just to reiterate, the board can elect to just approve an EPC project without voter approval. Due to the fact that EPCs are based off of energy savings for a school, there's buyback periods based on what your EPC contractors bring to the table for what they can do for your school. Typically we see 15 to 18 year buyback depending on what they are bringing to the table, such as LED lighting, some controls, things like that. So you always start 10% lower than what your basic A ratio is. So you could not have the public vote on it and you would get a 65% A rate on the EPC, and the EPC would actually target, and Ben can comment on this, the EPC would target the dollar amount of your reimbursement to be in that range to where it could be a no impact to the district, but in the case to have more robust EPC, you bring it to the voters to get that extra 10% and bring you up to 75% or roughly. So that should be recommended as proposition 1 in your vote, is your EPC project for your voters to approve would give you the ability to get that extra 10% aid on that portion of the project. I think
I'll just add to that. The other thing I think that gets lost a little bit with EPCs is the financing aspect of it. So if you choose not to have an EPC voter approved, you're forced into a lease financing. Meaning when you borrow the money, you have to do a lease, which is inherently more expensive than a bond financing. So from a financial perspective, I always recommend that people vote it. And then, so not only are we gonna get more building aid, we're also gonna reduce the interest expense. The district's gonna be in a win-win situation. So just wanted to mention that piece of the puzzle.
Could I just ask you both just to move closer to the screen so that anyone who might be viewing at home can see the voices are coming. Thank you.
And then secondly, moving into the propositions for the capital project and the questions that are arising of splitting between keeping it as one solid vote for the whole package of the project, including what has been discussed as the turf field and the building project as one. And then the question of splitting it into multiple votes. One of the main reasons we see propositions split, and we just had one recently at a neighboring district. I can use an example as Harpersville. Harpersville split their vote up because of financial reasoning. They wanted to do an artificial turf complex, and in order to do so, there was going to be a tax impact on top of what they wanted to do for a building project. So that second proposition was going to have an impact to the community's taxes. So they split that vote up. That did pass, even with a tax impact in Harpersville. But that is what we're seeing being a major driving factor of splitting propositions up, is the potential for tax impact of a district. Another reason being, as one that we've seen here, is a community driven due to concerns of community members. It's quantifiably difficult to say how much that needs to be split, as you know, but that is another driver. And the third factor that we just want to bring a point to, and Ben can chime in, is splitting a proposition locks you into that dollar amount of its usage. So what I mean by that is, we'll use round numbers here. I know these aren't, and I just want to put a caveat to that, these aren't the numbers you're using, but let's say it's $10 million is to be spent on the capital project in the building, and $2 million is going to be spent as the proposition for the artificial turf complex. That is the numbers you are locked into to both of those projects. So if your field were to come in at 1.5 million at bid time, you have $500,000 remaining in that field project. That can't be pulled into the building project and used towards the building project. It would have to either be, you wouldn't bond that total amount,
There would be money left unspent.
or you would use it for if you had alternates or things like that in the project. So, and that goes vice versa. So by having it in one proposition, come bid day, if some numbers on some portions of the project are higher and some are lower, it allows you the flexibility to move things throughout if they're in one proposition. And two, it limits you to the movement of the dollars on those scopes of work, because you're limited to those scopes of work. So the building project, you're gonna encompass everything we've spoke about, whether that's the technology wing, the auditorium work, etc. The large chunk of money can be spread out amongst those scopes because the voters have approved that scope of work at this general dollar amount. So if you have a proposition with a choked down scope of work, that dollar amount will only be able to be used on that scope of work. Am I right?
Very well said.
Okay.
Yeah, and so bond propositions are written very broadly, to say the least. Usually they will just say, reconstruction, and if there's additions to your district facilities, and by facilities I mean all your facilities, it encompasses all of them, all site work and all incidental costs included. So you want it to be as broad as possible, and as you mentioned, that when you split the propositions up, it certainly restricts the spending of money in certain ways. So that's the biggest, again, to agree, the biggest, downfall of splitting it up. In your case as well, we've looked at the financials, many ways, and your project is, if it was all as one, is no tax increase. If it's split up, it's still no tax increase. The tax increase is generally the deciding factor on what drives communities to separate those into multiple propositions. The most I've ever had on a ballot was 5, and only 2 passed. So just throw that out there for what it's worth. But it's not as common unless you do have a really hot button item that some people in the community want that choice on. At some districts, we have seen this as well. Sometimes they'll just go with a single proposition, and then if that vote were to be defeated, you could come back. I don't know the exact legal number of months you have to wait, but a certain number of months you come back, you split it up at that time. So there's always options there as well. Obviously, every district wants to get their propositions passed the first go around. So there are pros and cons to each side of the equation.
And with each, if there's ever a delay, just as I want to throw this out there, we're on a tight timeline to meet goals of when our drawings are ready to go to SED, when they're approved, when we can bid. Just a bump in a month or two in this process could push you to the next construction season, and we all know what's happening with construction costs year to year. So when propositions, if they do go down, I think as you're aware of the last proposition and the effects of what that did and pushing the projects on and getting less work being able to be done because of inflation, just that's something to keep in mind throughout this process is if the proposition's voted down. And I think you would probably be, and this is something you're gonna have for your verbiage in your August meeting of how these propositions would work and if and how you choose to do them. You're two, if you split the turf field, two would be contingent on one passing. I'm sure that's the way we see a lot of schools do that. So the main building project, if it failed, the turf project would not move forward. That the propositions can be written that way. Just keep that in mind. I know that that's happened before. Livingston Manor just had one for an additional bridge project on top of their main building project. If the main building project were to fail, the bridge project, even if it passed, wouldn't move forward.
So in keeping in mind that you've already gonna have the EPC and a capital, so you could potentially have 2 capital, 1 EPC, the ballot starts to get a little bit more crowded, for lack of a better term, so. But obviously the board knows the community better than we do, so we were happy to run figures and analysis with one, multiple, or combinations.
In your experience, if a project is voted down and then it is split, what is the time frame are you talking about?
I think I was gonna defer to Bruce, I think it's 3 months, but do not hold me to that. It's definitely, there's a significant amount of time.
So Ben, Mr. Schultz and I have worked pretty hard over the past few years to ensure, and we've certainly worked with the board in explaining the implications for when you fall out of that debt cycle. And we have a long-term plan now that accounts for stabilization in our overall debt, where that falls off, where it will be advantageous to incur a certain degree of debt, to the degree that it has also allowed us to make informed decisions on the size of projects overall that we can withstand, also with a secondary consideration for incidentals and the cycle of those coming on in of course. So you mentioned a timeline in terms of the more immediate impact of, the construction implications, the vote and those kind of things. But I also want to remind the greater importance of staying in that cycle of debt and not only where the project would be delayed, but also the subsequent impact that would have on when we go to ban and bond, ultimately influencing that. And then years down the line, that will also impact the degree to which we can continue to enjoy capital projects with zero impact to new taxes and our taxpayers.
Yeah.
So I feel pretty protective of that cycle to ensure that the district stays not only in a healthy cycle, but responsible to taxpayers. That argument is not to push anybody or to support one versus two propositions, but rather to underscore this sense of urgency in whatever decision we make in a way that allows us to move forward.
And we've kind of looked at not only this vote, but potentially the next 2 votes. So we kind of
Right.
setting up like a 10-year to 12-year cycle, and to stay on that is very important. This is one of the, we work with a lot of districts, but in particular, your district has been very thoughtful in laying out that plan, keeping the taxpayers, the tax cap, and the capital exclusion at the forefront of that discussion.
So, this is a
So
question,
please, ask.
who this is a question for, but this is strictly just the EPC part of it. What happens if that's voted down? If
We
the
can still move
EPC
forward with an
You don't have to
EPC,
wait
but
the
we
3
just-
months or whatever,
No,
it will just
no,
cost
we
more
can-
money.
That will be a conversation back at the board. We can still move forward with the EPC, but just know that our reimbursement rate would fall 10%, so it would fall 65 instead of 75.
Can't bond this.
And then you do lease
Yeah, that's
financing.
how it was.
And then the lease financing.
So it would
Right.
become certainly less beneficial.
And we would inform the board not only of options, but also of the impact, so that you can make an informed decision on whether to move forward with that piece.
Have we, while you're here, any changes in bond rates with interest rates that would impact any of our projections based on where we were a year ago? Has that been adjusted?
That's a quick question I get a lot, and it's a good question. So one of the things, being that you have a 73.3% building aid ratio, you're somewhat insulated from changes in interest rate. And kind of how it works, I'm gonna use talk with my hands a little bit. So there's one interest rate that you sell debt at, and then there's another interest rate that you get reimbursed at the state level, and they move kind of like this together. So as long as I build in enough cushion between the two, if interest rates go to 10%, your building aid will also rise, and you're kind of held harmless.
Okay.
So although there is concern that the numbers are getting bigger, obviously interest expense is growing, the aid is also coming up.
It's responsive to that change.
Exactly. Exactly. So as long as I build in enough cushion at the forefront, then you're protected.
Just a scenario, let's say we do decide to split, and knowing that it restricts the use of money, but because of what we hear from the community, we decide it would be advantageous. How would it affect, let's say, so we split it, energy, building project, one vote, fields, a second vote. One passes, because I have not heard one thing against those two propositions. But the second proposition doesn't pass. How does that affect the cycle of debt when we still go ahead on that major portion?
So just to clarify, to rewind to what that would look like on the ballot. If you decided within the capital project that the building and perhaps the parking lot site work associated with the buildings was one, athletic fields as a separate one, which is what some of what we're hearing. The EPC would then be a third one. The EPC doesn't get lumped with the building.
Ever.
That has to be a standalone one.
Okay.
In order to, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, in order to have that full aid adjustment.
Okay.
So no matter what, there will be a minimum of 2 when we come to the ballot. EPC, because that's one, even though it's not related to the question that everybody is wondering what the board's gonna do. And then either the second one will be capital project as a whole, or 2 separate propositions in the capital project side. So we're looking at 2 or 3 total.
In the
Okay,
cycle of that.
So again, the scenario would be, what
So
happens?
same question,
Yeah.
right?
With-
What the impact of that would be.
Right.
It would depend really on the size of the projects that do pass. And at that point, the board would need to decide, what do you wanna do with the part that didn't pass? If we were to assume that we weren't gonna do anything with it and just put forward the one that does pass, then the project size is that much smaller. What we would need to go to bond on eventually would be smaller, and it would diminish that overall debt. And then we would run exact numbers to see what the long-term impact of that would be.
There is
So it depends on the
some
size of the
I'm
project,
sorry.
right?
No, there is some flexibility in give and take in those, so if the turf, is it turf roughly 2.5 million?
Somewhere, yeah.
So there's that, to be honest with you, if you're looking at a $12 or $14 million, that there's enough wiggle room where I would work very closely with the district to make sure that we don't have a significant fall off. And you can kind of think of it as like you'd have a smaller payment, so maybe we could front load the debt faster,
Right.
so that there's no fall. But there's some give and take.
And would we be able to, just a scenario, if 1 and 2 passes and 3 does not, that's just, 1 and 2 could go ahead. We don't have to wait for 3 months, correct? And just the 3 months, then as a board, we could say, what can we do that will be palatable if we decide?
Correct. And just to clarify, I know we keep talking turf. Turf is only what's being discussed for Dave Kelly Field. The lower athletic fields are not being recommended for turf. That is the multi-purpose soccer and softball field, but that stays natural sod. There's drainage that has to happen down there. We're talking that the plan is for a full skinned infield for the installation of the softball field and dugouts down there. But the recommendation would be, if they were pulled out, that the athletic fields together would appear on the proposition as that second part of the project.
The time when the fields did go down, there was at least talk of doing the Dave Kelly Field again as Clark did it originally, and removing sand, resurfacing it, and is that a possibility if it doesn't go through?
That's a discussion for down the road,
Okay.
anything could be, but that's not what's being proposed in this project.
I realize that, but I'm just thinking, what if this doesn't happen? Then what are our alternatives?
It would have to be a whole other project. We would have to come up with a new project.
And you'd have to go to the voters again
Correct.
and go through the
Right.
process of.
Which is what happens in every,
Right, if,
often there's things that are left off
Right.
because prioritization
Okay.
and size of the project, so, yeah. I assume that would just push off to the next one.
welcome.
Thank you. Can we talk about maybe you don't know, or maybe you know, the cost of going to the voters with a proposition for a district this time?
You mean cost is it added expense to the?
And does that get ultimately bonded into the project?
I mean, it all becomes part of it, but from my perspective, it does not provide an extra cost. It's a matter of having some coordination with your attorneys and your bond counsel, but it's really like a separate, set of documents, but it's nothing, it's not onerous. It's not like an extra $100,000, I can't really quantify it, it would be fairly small, if anything.
It's more about the schedule, to me, from what I'm hearing, it's more about the schedule and the timing and what could potentially take us off track. If we split it and there's a third box to check instead of 2, but that's gonna keep us on schedule.
So
It's
just to,
how you can spend the money too, it's it's moving the money too, it's not just.
Yeah, but the numbers are pretty solid by the time it gets to that point. We have a very confident.
I'm sorry, I'm very naive. May I ask a question?
there's gonna be another section for public comments, so yeah, by all means.
And then the estimate of the numbers are pretty, there's always some surprise at the opening, but they're usually pretty close. From my experience.
For flexibility purposes, and from a financial perspective, and given what you're saying and what I'm hearing, it seems that leaving it as one vote would be beneficial, and if it didn't pass, then splitting it. Like, why split it before, is my question.
Personally, from my experience,
Financial
maximum flexibility
Yeah.
is paramount for any construction project because things can happen. So I agree with that.
It
Exactly.
just seems like such a hassle to do that, but just hassle.
I think the only reason we would think or consider making it separate is if we feel that the temperature or the temperament of our community If it's left as one, we'll vote it down. And if they vote it down, then all the good things wait to, and then we're off the cycle. If there's that possibility, if we feel that there is a strong possibility or a slight possibility, no possibility, we have to decide, I guess.
But then we can still go forward.
But I do believe I've not heard one thing against the other parts.
Right.
And that's what concerns me.
Yeah, I really want people to, I mean, one of the biggest things that I think is the selling point is our lack of space and you know, the kids not being able to play. And that would solve that problem. But, I mean, we've already approved the scope, now it's just one vote or separate. But if we kept it as one and it got voted down, then we 3 months to move forward with the semi? I mean, am I hearing this right? So it just seems that keeping it together makes the most sense, and that way we don't lose out on 500,000 here or 500,000 there. We can take it and use it for other stuff.
And it does make sense if we are confident that it will be voted. Again, those who have been on the board when it got voted down, everybody was people who never voted before came out to vote.
I think that I don't know if you can compare the two, I really don't, because I wasn't on the board then, but even as a taxpayer, I was not informed, it was not explained to me, I was not informed on that project to the extent of what it really was or things like that. So I think this is a different situation, a different time, I really do.
And yet I hear the same arguments.
Well, I didn't remember hearing about our space issues then at all.
Right.
And our problem with the Legion, like that never came up.
I mean, I will say from a perspective of someone who is working on a lot of these projects with many districts throughout the state, and as a local taxpayer, I will commend you as the board as being as transparent as you have been, as early as you have been. Many districts do not bring projects at this early of a developmental stage to the public's eyes until very close to just sending the newsletter out, here's the propositions, and they'll have one session where they'll have public comment prior to the vote. So as someone who lives in the community and is a voting member, I would commend you at that, and I think that's why you're getting a lot of interest, is because you've brought this up early, and that's not a bad thing.
No.
Well, we have committed to improving communication, improving transparency, and ensuring that a good voter is an informed voter. So our goal tonight was not to make a decision or to bring resolution to this, but if I can summarize the reasons that both Mr. Yando and Mr. Mazzamona have presented for us, I kind of captured 4. Jump in if I can capture them all. Number one reason that sometimes districts may choose to include additional resolutions is because if there is tax impact on one side of the project and not another. We've clarified, thank you, that that's not the case here. We can do all of this with no increase to taxes for this project. The piece that I think, Lauren, you were tapping on a little bit, you lose flexibility within the project in terms of being able to, at bid time, if a bid comes in low in one area and you want to redesignate that amount of money to either a bid alternate or another section of the project, you lose the ability and flexibility to do that, where you're remanded just within the capsules that were voted on in each proposition. We talked about implications for timeline with consideration for construction costs changing, which we've experienced, impact to overall cycle of debt, which we could break up and share with you in a future meeting what that impact would be. And as Lucy summarized, it really comes down to how do we quantify the tenor of the community? from my seat, I've heard a lot of arguments both ways. Depending on where you are in the community, you may also have heard a little bit of both. You may have heard more of one than the other. And it's challenging to try to put a number to that to predict the outcome of a vote, because even through the use of surveys, community forums, what have you, there's a certain degree of selection bias there. People who want to be heard are the ones who come, and may or may not be representative of the community as a whole. And there's really no true way to quantify that. All of that being said, we will be holding another public community forum to hear from our community, provide another opportunity for that over this summer. And then once the board calls for vote in August, we are required by law to hold an official public hearing in that 45-day time span between the call for vote and the vote, which is still slated in October. So there will be 2 more opportunities for open public forum for the community to share their thoughts, respond to questions, those kind of things on this topic. Regardless, come August, when you call for vote, that will be the time that the board does determine in what order these propositions will appear on that ballot. So that's really what it comes down to. We continue to have some things to think about, but at least we've started the conversation tonight. And are there any more questions at this point for either Jared or Ben?
No, they've been very clear. Thank you.
Thank you for taking time out of your evening to join us tonight. I know that we do have a member in the community that wants to address the board on this topic. There will be, because this is a regular Board of Education meeting, there are opportunities both within the agenda at the beginning and the end for anyone in the public to address the board. So you will have a few minutes when we get to that point.
And you mentioned several times that there are going to be
Yes.
other meetings.
I don't have dates for
That's
this
what I was
yet.
gonna ask.
Yes,
Thank
as
you.
soon as I do, we will have one. Travel safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a question, I'm sorry, I stepped out to go to the bathroom, I'm so sorry. We're having 2 more public hearings?
We will have one, yes, my plan is to have another one at some point over this summer. And that is, it's not a hearing, it's another forum.
Why?
It's not a formal board meeting, there's not business of the board, it's another community forum similar to the one that we held previously. Some updated information that I'm hoping to gather are other options for, as opposed to crumb rubber as an option in the turf field on Dave Kelly Field. The questions that might be related to the SECRA at that point, hoping to hear the results of that back. And then what the public information with vote dates, Q&A, those types of things to share. So after a board calls for a vote and accepts the negative declaration as a result of that SECRA process, and then they also declare as lead agency on the project, and then in a separate resolution, they call for the vote, then it starts a 45-day timeline of official public notice. So earlier when they're saying that some districts don't engage the community at all prior to what's legally required, that's what they were referring to. There's only a legal requirement to notify a community for 45 days before coming to a vote. And within that 45 days, you hold one public hearing. So we still will meet our legal obligation to engage in those practices. However, we will less formally continue to open our doors to our community for feedback via another open forum, which is probably this summer. Yes, this summer, I just don't know if it'll be July or August.
And when do those meetings happen in relation to when we decide about the proposition structure?
One will happen prior to that, so that the board will still have another opportunity to hear the informal, and then the formal one can't happen until after that, yes.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Do we have one on the 20th? More, I think we do more. We have a special meeting on the 20th?
of June.
Yeah, Tammy will hit that in future meetings, that's not related to this at all.
Okay.
Right, that's a different purpose.
Got it.
Thank you. Okay. Ask for a motion, please, to approve a proposal submitted by Ms. Melissa Emilio to start a 7 through 12 track club that will not meet during school hours with no budget and no stipend to be paid from an advisor position.
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion is carried. A motion, please, to accept donation in the amount of $90 from St. John's Episcopal Church for use in the backpack program. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Question.
Yeah.
Not over the summer, but perhaps in September, can we get Mrs. Miller here to sort of explain exactly what goes into the kids' backpacks, just what it takes to run that program?
Of course.
I know there's a lot of people in the community and also a lot of business owners that would love to donate and volunteer their time to make sure those kids ate over the summer. But I think it really starts with an ongoing discussion with Mrs. Miller since she's the most informed.
We can have her do a presentation.
Would love that.
Certainly.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, we need to set a date for our annual reorganizational meeting. And I believe tentatively what we're looking at is Wednesday, July 12th.
Well, this is June.
July 12th.
I'm okay. We have a Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday night meeting, but Wednesday.
So what time would you say?
That would be 6 o'clock, because we don't,
At night?
we'll start at 6.
Okay, I could probably come at night. I can't come during the day.
Okay, yeah, no, this is our,
No, this is
reorg.
this will be our July meeting.
So yeah, it would start at 6 o'clock because we don't technically have the board set to have an executive session required.
Sorry, did you say there's no executive?
Correct, not for reorg.
Need a motion?
We do.
Yes, you do.
A motion to set Wednesday, July 12th as our annual reorganizational meeting. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion's carried.
At 6 o'clock?
Yep, yeah, 6 o'clock. Okay, this time we will take public comments. Please note, the Board of Education welcomes comments and questions during the session, but they will not respond to these comments or questions at this time. Items or issues you wish the board to consider for action or discussion may be placed on the board agenda by contacting the district clerk or superintendent 1 week prior to the meeting.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Kathleen Copperfield, for anyone who doesn't know me. I don't want to speak for or against the idea of the turf. I know it's a hot button issue. I'm myself, I'm still on the fence about it one way or another. But because it is that level of an issue, you know, I have not heard any negative comments about a tech lab. I haven't heard any negative comments about a sound system for the auditorium. I feel bad for those theater people. I was a theater person myself. That sound system, no offense to the school, is awful. And to think that those kids, the thing is going to be sacrificed just to try and force the public to vote on the turf field is hurtful to those students, to be honest. I mean, the arts always take second place to sports because sports bring in more money. But, there's just no reason for it to happen in this case. We know that the turf is an issue that the public cannot, make a decision on, that we've got people going on both sides. So let the theater department have their sound system, it just doesn't seem right to me. He was talking about no tax issue, I do question that. Yes, there may not be any taxes now, but what are we facing future of a turf field? They require upkeep, they require maintenance. If there's not money in the budget at a later date, say 5 years down the road, and improvements need to be made to the turf, where is that money coming from? We live in a low-income community, and we have people that, if you raise their taxes just a little bit, you're pushing them out of their homes. So, that's something to be considered for turf, which, on my side where I feel we don't need it is, we live in a farm community, we have grass. That's what it's all about. We're not a Division I or even a Division II school. We're not playing sports at that level, so do we even need this turf? He had commented about movement of money, and having the flexibility. I don't know if it's too late for this, but if it was decided to separate the proposals, can you throw a little extra things into the turf so that you make sure you use all the money, replace bleachers, something to that effect, to make sure that you're spending everything that's allocated to that portion of the funds. That's basically what I have to say. I just, I can't believe that we're going to allow a turf field, the idea of making changes to sports affect whether we provide a tech lab to our students. In the community we're in, there's a lot of families that cannot provide advanced technology. They can't take their kids to museums, they can't drive them down to Washington or down to New York City. So it is our job to provide them that technology so that they see it before they go out into the world. Whether or not they have turf fields to play football on is really not the end of the world. How many of our football players are going off to play football in college level or for NFL teams? I can't imagine there have been too many, so.
Thank you. Move on to board comments, and we'll start with Shepherd.
Well, first I would just like to state that I'm not on this board to force things on anybody, and I do not vote to force things on people. I would also like to clarify that it's not, as Ms. Zimmerman said, it's not just a turf project. It's a sports, more of a sports complex, and there will be fields, part of it that are regular sod and not turf. That's all I have, thank you.
Mr. Hay.
Yeah, I'd like to congratulate the recent appointees, and the folks that received tenure are now part of the team longer term. I would encourage you to come to the public forums. Some of the comments that you had are well taken. I think some of the things could be answered in some of the information we've had presented, so it'd be good to have you come to those. And encourage other people that have similar, questions that may need some more information.
Sure. Ms. Kelly.
I too would like to welcome the new appointees, and we welcome you. I had talked to Superintendent Zimmerman about protocols for buses being more maybe evident. I'm thinking that with working mothers and fathers, many too often, the protocols for buses you mentioned, are in the calendar and are on our webpage.
Which protocols are you referring to?
Arrival distance for drivers that they can't stop, and
Yeah.
if your child doesn't go on. I'm thinking for a busy 2023 household, it would be easier for a parent of young children or any children, really, to have that protocol put in with their bus pass. So that they can actually see it, because I know when I was with young children, did I look at every page of the calendar? I saw the days they had to be in school and the days they were off, and the bell schedule. Other than that, I didn't look at anything else, and I just a suggestion.
I'm fairly certain that those do get sent home. I know that in addition to being included in the calendar, they're also explicitly stated on the transportation page of our website. Parents are provided pretty explicit trainings both at the pre-K and at the kindergarten orientations. But I'll follow up with Mr. Bursboard to see if that suggestion is being implemented.
And I would like to clarify, it was made comment that the sports bring in a lot of money at our school. We don't charge for any attendance. It doesn't bring any money in. And I do believe, as a member of the board and as a wife of 2 coaches, we do value our arts in our school and our technology, and that's one of the reasons why I definitely want the technology part of our building project to go through. I would like to also comment on the concerts. I think it was mentioned, not only were they good, but they showed marked improvement. And that was evident not only to the people who were schooled in those areas, but I'm not schooled in that, and it was very evident. No squeaks and squawks, just really quite a nice music, nice time. And my last comment, and I'll be very quick, I was shocked when, and I'm sure we all got this on board, where the leading page of this month was FBI, 3,000 children face sextortion annually. I was shocked that it was so widespread. 3,000 minors. They said 7,000 reported cases throughout the United States. And
Reported, it's probably a lot higher.
all I can think is, a few years ago, we said we really want to earmark mental health. I think we have another thing we need to earmark as a board. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tucker?
I'll be quick. I just would like to say thank you to everybody on board for the last 3 years. It's been a very educational experience for me, as it should be at a school. I definitely see life through very different lenses than many of my peers, and I thank you all for putting up with me. So good luck in your endeavors, and thanks, Ken.
Mr. Letty?
Thank you. And I just want to congratulate all our graduating seniors as they are receiving awards and accolades and beginning a new chapter in their life, and encourage them all to celebrate.
Safely.
Safely. Thank you.
I'd just like to say thank you I know I speak for Tyler and myself when I say that. Thank you for the position and just listening to our comments and everything we had to say. Very happy about it and very thankful for the opportunity. And I'm very excited for the next person who gets to be sitting in the seat. So thank you.
We've
Thank you,
already
Carter, for your
had
time.
4 or 5 different applications picked up by this year's juniors.
Oh, good.
Which is awesome. And before you go on real quick, Mr. Letty brought up graduation. I will need a head count of which board members are planning to attend graduation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, excellent. And Mr. Tucker, Mr. Tucker, will you be sitting on the stage with the board members, or will you be sitting with your family, do you know yet?
I'm gonna sit on stage.
Okay, terrific, thank you. Got that?
Okay, as noted, our next meeting, regularly scheduled meeting, is our reorganizational meeting, which will be held on July 12th at 6 p.m. There will be no executive session. There is going to be a special meeting held on June 20th. We anticipate the board will convene an executive session at 5 p.m. and return to open session at 6.
It may be sooner,
It may be sooner, right. The deadline for items to be placed on the board agenda is the Tuesday prior to each Board of Education meeting. If you have any questions, please contact the district clerk, 607-746-1306. I don't believe we have anything for second executive session, so I will take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Always quick to get those. Thank you.
Thanks. It's been nice. Like, enjoyed my.